Hey, this is Brimstone. You're watching AFK away from the keyboard. Ain't no better place to be than right here watching now.
Alamo City Comic Con, how we doing? Oh, you guys can do better than that. How we doing? Are you guys excited for the Lord of the Rings? Awesome, awesome. So at this time, I need you guys to put your cell phones on silent. Is that cool? You guys put it on silent. Put them away. If you're taking pictures, no flashes, all right? That blinds us up here. At the end of the panel, you will be exiting that way. Are you guys, behind you. Don't go that way. That way. Awesome. Are you guys excited or what? Please welcome John Noble, Billy Boyd, and Manu Bennett. Oh, come on, let me hear you guys. All right, all right. So what's going to happen is I'm going to ask a couple questions, maybe just one because we have so many people in here. And you guys can start lining up on these two mics right here. You can see one right there and one right there. So you guys can start lining up if you like. Whew, man, how you guys like in San Antonio right now? Feeling the heat and the cold?
It's freezing in this room. What the hell happened when we walked in here? It was like...
Yeah, well, us Texans enjoy the cold when it's really hot, if you haven't noticed.
Feels like
so
that last scene in The Hobbit.
Awesome, awesome. So just to get things going, this is for all three of y'all. What was your most challenging scene? Start with Manu.
The whole thing that I did was in motion capture, so automatically the big hurdle was to actually sort of bring a dramatic performance to a creature that was a lot bigger than me, for starters. When you put on that little, basically when you do motion capture, you're in a body stocking. You're dressed like the Gimp. You got little balls that they put on each part of your body that'll move. So that they're reading you like a skeletal sort of movement thing. Then they'll paint over the top of it. Yes, kid. Right answer. Actually bringing Arzog to life in terms of his size, I started thinking about what Andy Serkis did, in terms of crawling around as a lizard and a kind of reptilian creature and having that yes, kid, right answer. But having this tight bodysuit on, sort of, I can imagine that, Andy would crawl around in it and feel quite at ease. Well, when I came out and I figured that everybody thought I had to be this big character, and I came out and I sort of felt like this sort of Christmas stocking, it kind of like really I had to just forget about the way that I looked and actually become really big. But what they did is they had this screen up in the studio that sort of showed me a semi-rendered version of Arzog. And when I walked around, if I walked like my normal way, Arzog's big figure would sort of go. And so I actually had to do this kind of making him big. I think the opening scene, I sort of stood with my back to the audience. And then I kind of like I sort of hunched over the shoulder and I did this kind of like, and then I kind of just had to sort of have this big size about him. And it was just an interesting realization that was kind of polar opposites to what Andy had to do in that suit, you know? And it was just something I had to be constantly aware of. And I'd go in half an hour beforehand and just warm up into that size, and then I'd just always be moving like that. I'd get back to the hotel and I'd be like, "There's my room key." But it was just kind of a big performance, you know. And I think that was. But you know, look, after seeing John Noble, like honestly, out of all of the movies that were made, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, I honestly think John's performance, from an actor's perspective, was friggin' amazing. I mean, I mean, it was on another level. You know, there's actors and then there's John Noble and a few people.
Appreciate that very much. Thanks, Manu.
Oh yeah. So most challenging scene for you, Mr. Noble.
The most challenging scene was probably the death scene. It wasn't the most enjoyable. My most enjoyable scenes were with this man over here, Billy. But this one it's very tricky because it was, to start with, I was in proximity to the flames, that I did have to pour oil over myself, that it was very uncomfortable and very dramatic. And we had to try and get that in one take. Now, those you know a bit about films, you know we usually take about 18. But because of the amount of oil and everything that was around the place, the first part of it we had to do in one. That was hard. But then laying down on the pier with the flames up either side, that was also tricky because I was in very flammable gear, and it was hard and it was so emotional. I got one redeeming line in Lord of the Rings. This horrible father, who in the midst of the flames, right at the end, he looks down at his son. He says, "Faramir, my son." And I said, "Is that it? Is that my redemption through the flames?" You know, after, that was the end of that. And of course, there was the run out, which I didn't do. That stunt, by the way, it's all part of the difficulty. That stunt of the guy running out and then jumping over the cliff. Cliff was CGI, but that was a big, big stunt. And in fact, I went to set to watch him do it. It was so dangerous to run 30 metres like that in full flame, and was so excited. So many people gathered around. You know what it's like when they do a stunt and everyone's going, "Come on!" There's a real sense of community, and when the guy finished it, it was just such a triumphant feeling. But that was a hard, hard scene to do. Thank you.
Awesome. Billy?
Probably outside the gates of Moria, which was actually a car park in Wellington, and they put like a swimming pool in big and filled it with water, and it was winter, and it was freezing, and it was a night shoot, and it was about 5 a.m, and my Hobbit feet, which were basically sponges, had let all this water in, and it was freezing. And I thought, it's the only time when I thought, if we do one more take, I'm going to have to say, I've got to go back, I've got to get these feet off, because I was freezing. And just when I got to that point, they got what they needed, and we got to go back to our trailers and get the feet off and put our feet into hot water. And oh, it was so nice. And a nice glass of wine. Oh! It was the greatest feeling in the world. You know, like when you really need a pee. And you get a pee. Oh. Just putting my feet in that hot water was the nicest thing. I can feel it now. In fact, I peed a bit when I talked there.
Awesome. All right, we're going to get the...
It's all right. It's nice and hot. Nice.
All right, we're going to get the Q&A going. Feel free to line up again this side over here, and help her out with the mic a little bit, if you may. Oh, we have our hands over here. Oh, yeah, there we go. Appreciate that, pedestrian. All right, go ahead.
Hi, just want to know, how long of a work day did you have? You seem like you worked constantly. Oh, by the way, Billy, my kitten is named Pippin because, yeah, he's a Pippin.
There's quite a few cats called Pippin, from what I hear.
Yeah.
Not many dogs.
Yeah, he's jet black and just everywhere.
It sounds lovely.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, how long a work day did y'all have? I mean, it's
The days were long. I think the Hobbits are in the Guinness Book of Records for sitting, and I know like a lot of like the orcs and stuff had makeup that took 12 hours to put on. Sometimes when we were leaving set, there'd be somebody coming in getting ready, to play a character 12 hours in the future. But because it took us 3 hours every day, and because we were there most days, it turned out that we spent more time in a makeup chair than any other actor has. What do you think of that?
That is intense.
Thank you. So the days were long because of that, because it'd be 3 hours, and then, we'd be on set and do the day, and then it was an hour to get the feet off and the wig off and all that. So the actual working day was, sometimes 28 hours.
wow.
Yeah, they were long.
For the Hobbit, well, as I said, I wasn't on the conventional filming set. Everything about Azog was really just post-production, more so than anything. I'd go in there and perform, but they'd use that and put that on top of the film later. I don't know whether anybody's aware, but originally there was an actor that played Azog, and he was a 7-foot guy in a suit. And somehow in the decision-making, they decided that they wanted a different look and a different performance, so they actually removed him from the film, which was no small task at all. So I was called in like 4 months before the premiere, and Peter Jackson had made up his mind that he was going to eliminate this particular performance from the film and then put something over the top. So everybody was really panicking. A lot of the post-production guys, all the special effects guys were like, we don't know how we're going to do this. This is just such a big demand to get this done quickly. So they called me down and they just wanted me to do a physical job. At the time I was doing Spartacus, and so I was really doing a lot of fight scenes, and I was basically just stepping into an orc's body as Crixus, and kind of like getting a big battle mace and riding this kind of giant wolf. We managed to do everything that I needed to be done in 3 days. And motion capture is good like that because you're totally isolated. It's just what you're doing. You don't have to worry about extras in the background or wrong lighting or missing the shot size or whatever. It's all just that they capture it in 360 degrees. They can do anything with your image. They can zoom into your eyeball if you want, or go between your legs and over your back. They can shoot from any sort of position with that character because it's locked into the computer. So basically they just worked me like a horse for 3 days to get everything they needed. It was a little bit demanding, and that Peter wanted some. What was the joke? Did that kid say something again? But yeah, Peter wanted some things to look more real, so he'd put more weight on the end of this particular mace that I was carrying, and spinning that around your head for about 4 hours was really quite taxing, on certain body. I'd say to them, hey, just get the masseuse at the end of the day back at the hotel, because I'd be really worked. They worked me hard, but it was great. Okay, darling. Half an hour. Oh wait. But yeah, there were great days. They were great days. I just remembered being just so into a whole new space as an actor, because motion capture is just a whole other mindset, and the technique is really, really interesting. And working with these great people who were sort of connected to the invention of video game technology, which was motion capture, Street Fighter, and these guys were the originators of all the motion capture for like Street Fighter, the original games and stuff like that. And so these guys were 20 years in their profession, and all of a sudden I was starting to bring it into film, which was interesting. Interesting to be on that sort of threshold of change in film as well, getting those sorts of performances in.
Great question.
I've asked that of Sean Astin. He said he liked it, so I thought I'd try it again.
Awesome. Let's go on the side.
I was just wondering, what were some of y'all's favorite locations to film in?
I didn't have that many. And I think, just in terms of the effect it had on me in Minas Tirith, the set that was done on was astonishing. It was built in a quarry north of Wellington, and you'd come into this quarry and they'd built this white city against the cliffs, so strong that in fact through the streets a horse could ride, even though it was made of the soft bricks. That was kind of awesome. I mean, seriously. And just about everywhere that Denethor went, there were these magnificent halls. And the amount of detail in them. One of the things that struck me most about going onto the sets of Lord of the Rings was that everything, the detail in everything was so precise. And in every performance, I agree with you there, so demanding, everything, and everyone wanted to do it perfectly. And I'd walk into these great big rooms and in a moment go to a back corner where I knew the camera would never go in a fit and find a statue carved absolutely perfectly with the inscriptions, because the artist had taken that degree of pride in his or her own work. And that actually sums up Lord of the Rings for me. It was total attention to detail, and I don't know, we just so much wanted to make Peter Jackson's dream come true, and that was across the board, I think.
Just for me, it was like actually seeing the environments included in the scenes once I'd done the performance, because I was just doing it in a space as open as this, you know, with some guys on computers sitting up there sort of analysing, you know, my movement. And then later on I'd do the voiceover in ADR, and they'd sort of put a leopard growl, and they'd drop my voice by an octave. And that was the ADR technique to get the voice of Azog. But then, you know, going into the movie and seeing like the ice, you know, when I fought Thorin on the ice, you know, that was all just shot just like in a place like this. But they were saying like, oh, now the big piece of ice is going to tilt backwards and you're going to fall into the water, and now you're floating upside down and they're going to think you're dead. And they had me on this table with like wheels on it, and I was just lying on it on my back, and they were wheeling. And then I'd go like, and now you're going to jump up through the ice, you're going to burst through the ice. I was sitting there going like this, and then I'd go like, okay, you ready? And I'd go, I'd do some of that. And the way it was pieced together, you know, it's quite funny when you think about it. But, you know, you're really acting and you're really trying to make this whole thing seem really big. But really, I was just in this really tight bodysuit thing going like, rah. You know? And then you watch it in the movie and it's like, Azog just come down like that, you know. I mean, I did jump up with a little bit of that, but, you know. I wish you could see more of the outtakes of making those things happen.
Favorite location?
Yeah, we got to go. There was a lot of really beautiful locations. I remember when we went to Queenstown, which was sort of Amon Hen and places like that. And Queenstown had a huge flood just before we arrived, and they'd lost the set. The set had, you know, was underwater, as was most of Queenstown. And people used to get around on canoes. It was great. And we got to the hotel, and the first 2 levels of the hotel was underwater. We had to get in through a ladder. Yeah. It was amazing. And then as we were down there, the water receded, and so every couple of days there'd be a new street with new restaurants and things that we could go to. It was great. That is so amazing. I'm starting to feel like I might have made that up.
I've never heard it before.
No, it is true. In fact, there's crew T-shirts with, like, you know, we survived the flood and all that. It did happen. It did.
I want one of those shirts now. Next question right here.
Yes, my question is for John Noble only. What's your personal take on on doing roles in different time periods? What I mean by Lord of the Rings, and then you did your role in Fringe, where you had different periodical clothing and so forth, and like in Fringe you had the internet and air conditioning.
Just summarize what the question is again for me.
Like, what's your personal takes on doing different time periods and roles?
Sure.
In-
Yeah, fine, and it's a good question. I never seriously play a time period.
in-
Ever? No, I don't. John, the actor,
Okay,
doesn't play.
yeah.
The costuming might,
Yeah.
and the circumstances may appear to be, but I certainly don't and can't think about that.
Okay.
Any more than I can think of a character's good or evil. I'm sorry, this is a bit of acting talk here. But you go in to play the truth of the character, to play the truth of the human being, wherever that is. And nothing's changed, you know. You can go back to the beginning of recorded time and human beings are exactly the same as they are now, except lacking the technology. And that's a really interesting thing to find, and I'm sure that, you know, 70 years in the future, they're going to be exactly like us with a bit more technology added on. So I don't really think about that, but it's a really interesting question because sometimes people think, do you have to go in your head back to that place? Well, no, because human beings haven't really changed that much, but thank you for the question.
Okay.
That was a great answer. Wow.
So my question is kind of for you two specifically, but among the different casts, both for The Hobbit and for Lord of the Rings, who is the better natural swordsman on both casts?
Well, we were taught sword fencing by a sword master called Bob Anderson, who sadly has passed away now, and he taught Errol Flynn, and he taught Darth Vader, and you know, lots of great battles that you've seen on film, he's done them, and he said he thought Viggo was one of the greatest swordsmen he'd ever seen, and he wanted him to be the greatest swordsman that he'd put on film. So I would probably say Viggo.
Yeah. He was an extraordinary athlete all round, wasn't he?
Yeah, and his stamina was incredible, wasn't it? He would do take after take, and he had his sword was huge and heavy, and he's fighting these stuntmen whose job it was to do that, and you know, he didn't just keep up with them. He was pretty special.
I mean, apart from the fact he's a musician and a poet and one or two other things.
And a painter.
But I'll tell you a story about Viggo Mortensen, which is a personal one. I joined the set of Lord of the Rings later because I was only sort of at the end of the second and then in the third. And so I arrived into this trailer park full of trailers, huge numbers of trailers. And they put me somewhere in this big long trailer that belonged to the New Zealand Parachute Club. God knows what that was about. And I was sort of feeling a bit lonely. There's a knock on the door. I open the door and there's Viggo Mortensen in full costume. He's just said, I didn't know him. He's just said, I've come to welcome you to our family.
Yeah.
That's the man. And he just led us so wonderfully the whole time, all the way through. So I hold him in, like the sword master, I hold him up here in respect.
Wonderful. Let's go this side. Good question.
A couple of questions for you guys. Hey. So Christopher Lee and Ian McKellen, both incredible actors. I know if I had to work with them, I'd be intimidated. What was it like working with them?
I think you have to be on your mettle. I mean, like most good people, if you come out there, you're prepared to work and you've done your homework and you know what you're doing, then it's a dream. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I certainly found that the scenes that I had with Ian McKellen were a dream because I was prepared and we did go battle to battle without, I certainly wasn't intimidated and he wasn't by me, I assure you. But it's do your job, you know, and unless the person that's the big star is a bit of a something or other, then he's not or she's not going to hold that against you. They'll be so thrilled that you've come to play with them. You know that expression? Come to play with us. That was my experience with him anyway. Billy?
Yeah, I mean, what a treat to get to do scenes with Ian and John, you know, to kind of, you know, especially when they're playing such powerful characters and having such powerful actors play them, and then to get to play with that, you know, to be part of that was wonderful. So, you know, the scenes where, you know, I'm giving allegiance to John and Ian saying, you know, and they're just lovely things to play.
Gorgeous.
And I think we all approached it like theatre, you know. We rehearsed and we didn't just turn up and hit the marks and you know, we tried to find everything from there. And it was lovely because of that, you know.
Very special.
Awesome. Did you guys ever listen to Christopher Lee's metal album when it came out? You know.
The Hobbits had a makeup trailer that almost took the whole makeup trailer, except there was one part at the end that was sometimes Ian McKellen, sometimes Christopher Lee and other people, and it had its own door so they could lock out the Hobbits whenever they wanted, you know. But when Krista was in there, he opened the door and he put on his albums, and he was great. He played these heavy metal stuff, and it was just great. And then there was other stuff where he was singing, you know, My Way, and you know, we used to have days each when we could choose the music. You know, Elijah one day, then me, then Sean, and then Christopher would have his day and he'd put his on. It was great.
That's awesome.
Great stuff.
Oh, yes. Ninja Turtles.
My question is actually for Manu. Manu, I recently read an article where you actually do practice with Maori weapons, spears, stuff like that. I just wanted to know how much of that actually went into your part of Azog, and if you could just go into a little bit into detail about that.
Yeah, you know, I'd be very careful in saying that I had any experience properly with any weapons. You know, I mean, being on Spartacus, I probably had the most weapon training that I had on any show, you know, and of course, you know, we were using those weapons almost every day on that set, so it becomes a little bit like second nature. I guess, you know, when you go to a boxing ring, you know, the first thing you do is get punched in the face, so you learn how to naturally move out of the way of that punch. So the same with sword fighting. I mean, you just naturally learn how to use, you know, one of 6 or 7 or 8 moves that deflects or attacks or something like that. And it becomes second nature. There was one scene where a guy actually had a real sword on set, and I had no idea. And I'm fighting him, and I had to kick him into a wall, and then he came back at me. And when he came back at me faster in the take than what we did in the rehearsals. So when he came at me, he stabbed right at my heart, and I only just managed to get out of the way. And I didn't know he had a real sword, but his sword hit me in the chest and cut me across my pec, and it cut it open. I've still got a little scar there. And I went, whoa, hey mate, wait, have you got a real sword? And he was like, yeah. It happened twice. It happened at that time, then it happened like in the last fight that I ever had on the show. And it was like, whoa, wait up, mate, that's a real sword. He hit me on the arm, and it cut my arm. And I mean, it doesn't really happen, but on a show like that, you've got hundreds of swords sitting around, and some of them are real, some of them are rubber. Only a couple are real, but that one just shouldn't have been in the mix. But over those months and months of shooting, it just ended up. Anyway, cut a long story short, you know, I learned to get out of the way, which is the most important thing, you know, I think. You know, look, being a Maori, you know, I mean, being a Maori is just an inherent pride. It's an indigenous culture. I belong to it. I can reflect well as an actor on you know, my cultural history and use that as strength. I mean, John, I was telling you my respect that I have for John. John, prior to getting Spartacus, John actually helped me get ready for another role that was about a UFC fighter called Mark Kerr. He did. And John prepared me for this particular role, and we got it. But unfortunately, I got to South Africa, and Jean-Claude Van Damme didn't show up on the plane, and this whole movie fell over. But you know, I thank this guy, because very early on in my career, I needed some belief systems to move forward. You know, and this guy helped me early on in my career.
My pleasure.
I
Very
thank him
proud
for
of
that.
you.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I think at the end of the day, your greatest weapon is, of course, here, and you know, it's here and here, and you know, as an actor, the more, as John said, the more that you go to these sets, willing to play and be open and be conscious, you'll learn these things very well, because you're going to be in the hands of some of the best stunt coordinators, you know, in the industry, and then some of the best, you know, weapons people. So, you know, you just absorb that. as long as you're open and your channels are open, you'll get good response. I mean, you know, yeah. Anyway, thanks, man.
Thank you guys for coming.
Awesome. Right over here.
I guess this one is more for Billy, but it could be you guys too if it applies. Do you guys still remain close with your Hobbit friends and the rest of the fellowship?
Yeah, very much. Especially Dominic, I suppose, is who I'm closest with. And we're always, you know, I see him all the time. When he's not, you know, he does this Wild Things TV show now. So he travels the world trying to find spiders and snakes and things. And make people like them more. That's it. That's what he, yeah. So, but I see Dom all the time, and Elijah and Sean and Vigo sometimes, and Orlando, yeah. So yeah, I still see them all the time, yeah.
That's good.
Awesome Hobbit party. Did you have one on? No, okay, you're good. All right, back over here.
Hey, it's
Hi.
Chelsea again. I don't know if you remember me, but I guess just based on the experience of today, just getting to watch all of the fans interact with you all, and you know, in some capacity, all of us are big Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, Hobbit fans, and I was just wondering if you have any stories of really memorable or crazy like fan interactions or anything besides me.
Crazy fans. They're all very nice and
That's it? What? Come, go.
Hi. I'm glad you've dressed for the occasion. Good.
Here we go. Well, John can jump in.
Okay.
Okay, everyone's got to tweak this crazy.
Get those cameras out. Yeah, come on.
Fans are usually, in my experience, brilliant people. I've not struck anyone that really I didn't enjoy. Sometimes it can be a little confronting if I'm in a restaurant and having a meal. That can be a bit confronting, you know, in that private moment. That's the only time, and I just gently say, well, perhaps not. But generally, people are really kind. To me, that's been my experience. I really haven't had a bad experience with the fans at all. In fact, usually it's a joyful experience, as today is. Thank you.
Not in the toilet.
I've heard that. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
I've heard that. It's like-
People
it's
have
like
talked to me
how you
about.
doing, mate?
Hey.
Are you deaf streak or something?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah, I've had that.
a few times.
So don't do that.
I know. I get, can we take a photo? Can we take a selfie? I'm like, you serious?
I love the fans. That was awesome. All right, let's go to the next question over here.
Hi, this is for Billy. A question. Can you sing The Last Goodbye?
How do you say no
I can
nicely?
pull up on my.
This is.
I can pull up my phone.
This is the next worst thing to be asked when you're having a pee for a selfie. If it's all right, I probably won't, but you can download it.
I already did. Thank you, though.
Thanks very much for asking. Yeah, well, it would sound weird because I don't have an orchestra or a guitar. Mainly the orchestra. But it was fun to write, though. Does everybody know that I did that song? Right, well, it's not a secret then. With a backbeat. Kick it I couldn't even remember the words there.
Let's
I
go.
was-
Freestyle it. We can do it.
No, no.
Oh, he's getting some water. Maybe he'll do it in a second. Who knows? Pressure's on. All right, let's go over here real quick.
Okay, sorry, it's a
There we
little
go.
tall. Hi, first of all. Just wondering, do y'all have like favorite lines that y'all remember the most, or like scenes that y'all had for all of you?
I'm sure we do. Sing for me, Master Pippin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ask that again.
Kick it.
We'll get there. We'll get him to do it. Before this is over, he's going to rap it.
What? If you do a show, you like, and we do a lot of television, invariably most of it disappears straight away because you're learning it very fast. If you learn something that's particularly profound or important to you, or it might be your first scene in a show and you're very nervous, then you will remember it. And I can still remember passages from plays that I did 40 years ago, where yet I might forget what I did on television yesterday. And certainly from a film like we did together, there are lines in there that are immortal. And I do remember quite a few of those, actually. Yeah, but it's not in everything. And when I did, when I played Walter Bishop in Fringe, there are some lines in there that I'll never forget, neither will anyone else, you know, because it was just so outstanding. So you do remember them, but not all of them, really.
Yeah, and stuff like, you know, I was always trying to get Tolkien back into the script, you know, so I was always kind of looking through the book. Like I remember there was something, you were asking if I remember, I don't remember actually. But I do remember trying to get this line about Boromir and how he, I can't even remember the line from the film now, but it was how he laid down his life for me and my friend kind of thing. And we got it into the film, so, you know, stuff like that I remember, you know, but I don't.
Favorite line from as an orc?
Yeah. There was just this one moment when I was working the warg. The warg, which was this giant wolf, was just like a pommel horse, and so it was a green screen pommel horse that I was sitting on top of in that gimpy outfit that I was telling you about, and it was one of the first scenes that I shot as Azog, and it was actually the end of the first movie where you know, everyone's up this tree, and Gandalf starts lighting these cones and these pine cones and throwing them down at all the wargs. Well, just at the beginning of that scene, at the head of that scene, I ride down on the warg with a few other orcs, and I had this line that was meant to be directed at the other orcs. I was meant to say to them, "Can you smell the fear?" And it was Gundanis, Gundanast. And I said to Peter, Pete, this thing that I'm on top of, what is it? It's a big wolf? Yeah. And he said, yeah, it's a giant wolf called a warg. And I said, am I going to be riding it a lot during the three movies? Is this kind of like my wolf? And he said, yeah, it's your own wolf. And I said, oh, you know, is there anything special about it? Like, do I have a relationship, or can I have a relationship with this animal? Because I could have sat there for the whole filming of 3 films and never referred to that animal, because it was just a pommel horse that I was sitting on. Mm-hmm. And he went, oh, well, you know, give it a go. What do you mean? And I said, well, this line, instead of like saying it outwards to the other orcs and being like, you know, we're evil, blah, 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 can I soften it up and actually deliver it to my warg? As though I'm saying, it's time to eat, you know? Can you smell their fear? This is your meal, you know, kind of thing, you know? But I'm saying it nicely to my animal. And then I went, oh, and also I've got my arm cut off, haven't I? I've got like this pitchfork thing on one of my arms. And he said, yeah, it's on your left arm. And so it said, well, maybe I can stroke the back of its neck, because dogs like the back of their necks scratched. You know, and so that's what I did. If you watch the movie, I sort of leaned forward and I sort of went like this. There was no head in front of me. I almost fell off the first time I tried to do it, because I was on the end of this thing. I went, and the guy's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so I was leaning right out because I said, its head's right out here. He said, yeah. So I sort of leant out and did nothing. There was nothing there. I didn't even have a hook on my hand. And I went, Kundenas. You know, and it was, and in the movie, it's an intimate moment.
Great story.
Just a different way to take a life.
Awesome. Well, last one right here, no pressure. And then we're going to do a picture.
Hi, this is for Billy Boyd. It's the similar request, but can you sing The Edge of Night? It's my birthday.
Kick it. Is it all right if I don't? Well, you wouldn't have asked, would you? Yeah, I'd like to bring bee cake. That'd be good. And then there'd be more people singing songs and doing things. Whose birthday is it? Is it really your birthday?
Yes, sir.
Can we do that instead?
Yeah.
Can we get a beat?
Yeah.
You can't do happy birthday to a beat. You want the beat?
Can we?
Okay.
Test 1, 2. That's how they start it. I've seen Eminem. That's how it starts. No, we'll just do it for really. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
Tracy.
JC. We almost blew it there. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Have a nice one.
Remember, you guys are going to exit right back here. We're going to take a quick little picture. Let's roll that music. All right. We're taking a picture. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess like a selfie without the selfie. And why are you guys so quiet? Get up! Thank you. Oh, right there.
That's a moving picture.
Oh, yeah.
What is happening?
I don't know. Hey, that was it, guys. You guys can go that way. Give it up one more time. Mother Reeves!
Thank you.